All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Camera Culture, a series from Will FM that puts the diverse creators of the NFT photography movement into focus. I am your host, Decryptolorian, and my very, very special guest today is Dan Hawk. Dan describes himself as an outdoor and adventure photographer based in Portland, Oregon. And he loves telling visual stories about how he feels about a place, a moment, and the people he is with. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, welcome. Thanks for the welcome. This is I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Oh man, I've been waiting for this all week. To be quite honest with you, man, this is great. I'm glad to have you here. I love your photography, and I love Oregon. So that's a fun fact.
It's hard not to, yeah.
Oh, okay. Before I ask a few questions, what I have to say is, California coast or Oregon coast. I'm partial to Oregon. What about you?
See, one of the things that's interesting is that Oregonians, like, we just call it the coast, and for Californians, it's kind of the beach. And
okay,
there are some beautiful coastal, rough coastal areas in California, but I think Oregon's got them beat. We have some insane, crazy rock structures and sea stacks, and I mean everything you could imagine. So,
man,
Oregon all the way.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. So I'm a California native, and yeah, there's nothing like the Oregon coast for me.
I'm not going to say I don't like to go to the beach in California. I mean, that's a good time, and I enjoy that, but it's a whole different experience.
Absolutely, and man, so okay. For those people who have never heard of Dan Hawk, the first question I always ask is, tell us about yourself.
Sure. Okay. Well, like you already mentioned, I live in Portland, Oregon. I am 47, so I've been around long enough that I started making photos with film back when I was a kid. I was one of those, kids that was always running around with a point and shoot camera. And I went through lots and lots of the disposable cameras. I shot on disc cameras. I had a Fisher-Price 110 little, it was Fisher-Price and Kodak. That was my first camera. And then I shot a little bit of film when I was in high school. And then I walked away from it for a long time. I came back when I had kids. And, sorry about that. The dogs are barking.
That sounds like home to me.
Yeah. And so, you know what? There we go. One of my sons is answering the door. So yeah, I spent a bunch of time learning about stuff when I had kids and getting some point and shoot cameras. And then I got into photography when I started bike commuting. And if you're a bike commuter and you're working a 9-to-5 job, you're riding during blue hour, golden hour on the ends of the days. I started taking pictures with my iPhone, the iPhone 4, and I got totally hooked. And I thought, well, I used to be a photographer. I think I'll get back into this. And that was the beginning of the end. So I just got really into it from there. And then I started taking pictures of landscapes. I actually then left my banking career and became a commercial photographer, and was taking a lot of photos of headshots, product photography, action and lifestyle at restaurants, at businesses, and things like that. And then very recently, like this week, I started a new job as a field rep for Sony cameras here in the Pacific Northwest. So it's,
wow.
So it's been a little bit of an interesting move through lots of different stuff. But also I'm a husband and a dad. I've been married for 22 years, and I have 3 kids, a 14-year-old, a 17-year-old, and an 18-year-old. So it's always busy here. There's always something going on, and there's always people swirling through the house going places. So
absolutely, yep. Those are the ages when everything happens.
Yeah.
Wow, That is awesome. So, I mean, you gave us a hint here. You left photography to go into the banking world. Is that right?
I wasn't really a professional photographer. I've had a fairly long and varied career, but I was a music major in college.
Oh, okay.
And then I went into music. I worked in music retail for a few years, basically working as selling guitars and keyboards and drums, and then kind of assistant managing the acoustic guitar department. And I did that. I was a gigging musician for a few years. And then I went into banking for like 12 years.
Wow.
And I left banking to become a commercial photographer. And then I've now, after a bunch of time as a freelancer, I kind of decided to take a next step into a different part of the industry. And I've been a Sony shooter for quite a few years. So it was kind of natural to jump in and kind of move into that now.
Wow. That's interesting. So you've always kind of been a creative, I should say. And then did you find that the banking industry kind of sapped that out of you a bit?
Yes and no. I'll tell you, you use the phrase, and nothing against it, but it's always kind of bothered me, the term calling people a creative, and there's a reason why, and it's because I feel like everybody is creative. So it's to say that just because you make music or because you make photos makes you a different kind of person, I don't think that's accurate. If you're an accountant, like there's super interesting ways to be creative with accounting, or as a banker, as somebody who's doing investments for somebody, there's a lot of creativity in all those different things. It just happens that if you're a photographer, you're creating something that's visually beautiful, and so people go, oh, that's creative. Or if you're a musician and you're making music, or if you're a painter, or anything. There's so many different things, graphic designers. But I've always felt like everybody has creativity. It's just a matter of what's the outlet for that. And so for me, for a long time, it was music. And then for a long time, I was really dumping all my creativity into a career. And I was managing teams in the banking world and coaching people and helping them to move forward in their lives and become better at interacting with people, become better at helping people, at doing consultative sort of work. And I feel like there's a lot of creativity in that. And so it's funny that I've been a full-time photographer for the last 6-7 years. There's so much business creativity that goes into that has nothing to do with taking pictures. So I'm a big fan of people tapping into creativity, even if it doesn't mean art, if that makes sense.
It makes all the sense. That's a fantastic perspective. I respect it a lot. I think it's awesome, to be quite honest, because you're absolutely right. There is creativity in everything we do, whether it be using the left side of the brain or the right side of the brain, right?
Right.
I totally agree with that. I like it.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny because even yesterday I was doing my new day job, and I'm in calls and I'm arranging for, events and things. And then I got an email from a magazine with an assignment for a editorial shoot. And so it's funny because I will put so much more time into the arranging of that shoot and the planning of it and all the things that go around it. And then I'm probably only going to be on set for an hour and a half. So there's a lot of creativity that I feel like goes into being a great photographer, that can do it as, in a way that makes people feel good, and that earns a living, if that's the kind of thing you're doing with your art.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I resonate with that because I do a lot of that kind of stuff in my other job.
Yeah. Cool.
So it makes total sense. Our first question, I guess we're throwing a few around. So, I'm going to put your work on the screen and start showing people, but, when you're doing professional photography or just photography on your own, do you have any artistic goals that are extremely important to you?
Yeah. So it's interesting. If everybody writes a bio for themselves, right? Artists have this maybe you write it in third person, maybe you don't. But it's always been important to me to really think about telling the story of what it felt like to be there. And so for me, that is the number one goal, is that when somebody sees an image that I've made, that they can go, oh yeah, there's an emotion that's captured in that imagery, that you know what it feels like to be in that place at that time. And photography is unique compared to other mediums, because video is more similar to kind of how the human eye experiences things. Our brains, we think in sort of linear time. We think of like a whole story, but a single image is unique, because you're trying to capture the whole story and the feeling and the temperature and all of the things about it in just that one image. And so for me, that's been my number one goal, is that every time I take a photo, you feel it, that there's a feeling. And sometimes that means it's not 100% accurate to what I saw, in terms of, this is not, I didn't just hold up a camera and take a picture. Sometimes there's some editing. Sometimes I put it together in a certain way so that it feels the way I want it to. And other times you just, like the picture you have on the screen there, that's my friend Sarah. She's a badass mountaineer. And that was, I took that picture after she had finished making a fire that a whole bunch of dudes couldn't make. And it's not a perfect photo. It's a little bit blurry. It's not super sharp, but man, it feels like what it felt like to be there.
Yeah. I have to say, yeah, I do a lot of hiking. So I live in Vermont now. But I used to do a lot of stuff on the West Coast. Yeah, this feels genuine. It feels unique to the experience. That's why I absolutely love your photography.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, I think that's the one of the things also is, when you think about, photography can have these, there can be stylistic choices that are indicative of when you took the photo or when you shared it. People process differently, and people take different kinds of photos. And I have always felt like I want my work to feel kind of timeless. I've always kind of aimed for to not have the processing be too trendy. And I think a good example would be to think about what kind of photo would be shared in a magazine. If this was going to be in National Geographic or Outside Magazine, or one of the magazines I shoot for here in the Northwest is Oregon 1859. It's kind of a really fun travel magazine. If they wouldn't share it in their magazine, then I know it's maybe a little over processed. So I'm trying to think about things being timeless and being true, but still breathtaking. That's kind of my goal.
Wow. Yeah, and I think you capture that for sure. Crater Lake here, and that's Wizard Island, isn't it? Right there.
It is. Yeah, and the guy in the foreground there is my best friend. It's we've been friends for nearly 25 years at this point, and
wow.
We were out there on a trip, just the two of us on a road trip, and that's an old photo, but the processing holds up because I didn't push it, I think, to be too trendy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So that photo is I think almost 10 years old.
I love it. I was actually looking at some photos I took there. Boy, it must have been 6 years now. This captures it. I mean, it really does. For me, it was hard to take a picture of it to give, because it's so breathtaking. It's almost like, how do you capture this? Because you got to be there, right?
You kind of need super wide angle to capture it right. But if you do that, then the details don't feel the right size.
Correct.
So it is a tricky place to shoot. I have found that some of the most interesting images I've seen there are, panoramics, where it's, kind of a flattened, really wide and not very tall panoramic image, because you can squeeze more in, but everything's kind of the right size. Does that make sense?
It does. Yep, yeah, it does, man. It's just, this place is so breathtaking. I love this shot with your friend. And it's even better knowing that that's your friend,
Yeah. I think he has that on his desktop, on his computer.
Oh, that's great. I love it so much. So I know we talked about it a little bit, but the commercial side of what you're doing, does that affect your creative process at all?
I think it does. And if you, so you're kind of on the main page here. And some of these are, images that I took while I was out doing stuff. And then they got licensed to somebody. Like this is an image where a friend of a friend is the guy who drives around the layered superfood truck to events. He shows up at like triathlons and, stuff like that. And he met us out in the desert and brought his van out there. And we were like, hey, man, let's take some cool pictures of this thing at sunset. And then they ended up using some of the photos for their promo materials. So it kind of depends. Sometimes I do some work where it's taking really interesting products out in the middle of nowhere and taking pictures of them. But I also go to, people's offices and take pictures of their people working. And I think that you just have to kind of figure out how do you blend those two. Sometimes, like I have a headshot shoot next week where I'm going to take pictures of 13 people who are like in a call center, just so they, when people call, they know what the person they're talking to looks like. That is not a super exciting or very creative endeavor. Between you and I, it's a great paycheck. It's a chance to meet some people that I wouldn't have otherwise met and get them to smile naturally. That's always a fun challenge. But it's not the same as going out in the middle of nowhere and looking for just the right conditions, the right weather, the right, the right lighting. It's a different process.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Wow. Yeah, and I understand those cubicles quite well.
Well, if you go up to the top and you click on the portfolios, you can go and there's people. This is almost all portrait work. That's completely different from any of that landscape, landscape stuff. So most of this is artificially lit. These are, people, kind of in the middle of whatever the thing they're super passionate about. And I do a lot of this kind of editorial photography for local magazines and businesses.
Man, these are really good. Well, I mean, yeah, you're just gonna hear me say that a lot because they are. I mean, they really are. I mean that.
I don't ever show this stuff on Twitter because it's not tied in with the NFT work. It's not what I'm working on. It's not that this isn't the kind of work that I sell to collectors. This is the kind of work that companies pay me to come in and take of their people. Then they can use it for their advertising.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even this bike repair, that's just fantastic. I mean,
thanks.
Level of detail and you're really capturing that moment. And I mean, it goes back to what you said in your beginning about, your about page. You're really trying to capture the people, trying to capture that moment, trying to capture everything. And I think you do. I mean,
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the stuff. This is the other side. This is the stuff that up until now has paid the bills. And NFTs have been interesting because that's been a supplemental way to make money off the art. But this is the main way that I've made money as an artist, is working, for clients, making work for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense. Okay, so this is a good transition question, but what attracted you to the NFT space? I mean, you've been doing this, this different kind of work for a while. And I don't know really what you did in the banking space. I kind of got an idea, but I mean, yeah. you probably get crypto a bit. So what attracted you to this place?
Yeah, well, it's always interesting to kind of, everybody has kind of their gateway person or friend that drags them in. So last year, I'm looking at the calendar and I'm realizing I'm pretty darn close to a year from my first. I actually minted my first thing back in May last year, but I started doing actually selling and really being involved in things in August. One of my good friends in the photography world is a guy named Nate Luby. And Nate is not super involved in NFTs right now, but he was at the beginning of last year. He sold a few pieces to Cactus Vince, and made a pretty good amount of money on it. And I just, it piqued my interest. And I was like, okay, I have to kind of sort out what's going on here. I'm super interested. How was it? I think he made like the equivalent of like $90,000.
Wow.
In a very short amount of time. And so I immediately got my attention. And I got on the phone with him and said, hey, okay, so walk me through this. What do I do? What platform? Where do I go? And he got me started. And like every other foolish person jumping in, I jumped in and I immediately minted some stuff, and then nothing happened with it. And that was in May, and I didn't sell any. My first NFT didn't sell till August, and it was mainly because I just wasn't involved in the community. But for me, there are some definite interesting thoughts about the blockchain technology that, as a commercial photographer, as somebody who makes art and licenses it to companies and individuals, the idea that there's a way to do this without a middleman, without writing checks, without people signing paper contracts, that is really intriguing to me. And it felt like this is something I want to be in on the ground floor with. I want to create art and figure out a way to sell that to people in this new way, using this blockchain technology, so that I don't have to worry about, is it being used inappropriately? Because there's no way to sneak around and use it inappropriately. If that makes sense?
It does. It does. Wow. So take me through your first mint. How was that experience?
Well, first of all, it's not on the chain anymore. I burned it. But I had a whole collection that I put. Yeah, I put one out on OpenSea, and I think I burned it. I don't think it's still. I think I just deleted it. But what I did is I got on OpenSea and I bought. I think I spent like $200. ETH was like $1,900 at the time.
Okay.
And so I bought enough to just like onboard. And I got onto OpenSea and I created my profile and I minted my first photo. And I was like, hey, this is a really great photo. Everybody's going to love this. And I immediately slapped a 1 ETH price tag on it. Because I was like, I see other people selling work for that much. I'll do that too. And it never went anywhere. And I didn't have a very big following of people on there. So I was like, well, this is interesting, but nobody cares. And then over time, I just started meeting other people that were dabbling in the space. And then I actually have a couple local friends here in the Portland area that had kind of a windfall and did super well. And that got me stopping and thinking about, is my strategy wrong here? So TJ Thorne is a local guy that I'm friends with, that we've been internet friends for years. We've run into each other out in the field a few times. And he sold out his collection of, I want to say it's 100 images of water textures, and just made a killing on it, and developed an amazing collector base. And then Jordan Ingley, Visual Suplex is his Twitter handle. Mm-hmm. And Jordan had a really beautiful collection of images that are in intentional camera movement from an area, a waterfall that had been closed due to fires. And it was, kind of an interesting story. But those guys jumping in and making collections caused me to revisit and go, okay, wait a second. What about collections? And so that's kind of how I jumped in. I minted my first collection. I made a few sales. Then I did another collection, made a few sales. So that's been kind of the process. It's experimental, because this is like the Wild West. You don't know what's going to work from week to week. And so I have a pretty broad range of different kinds of work out there because of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you hit on it. It is definitely the Wild West, and you never know what's going to be the next thing. Do you find that is exhausting, or do you find that it's really fun?
I think it can be both, right? I mean, those are both good descriptions. For a good example, like the photos you're looking at right now on the screen, the blue one at the bottom was my first. It wasn't my first NFT, but it was the first piece I put on Foundation. And this sat there. It didn't sell until I think April this year, and I minted it last August. And so there is a a thing in the back of your head where you start to go, okay, why did I put this work up? I adjusted the price so many times. I showed it so many times. If you were to go through my Twitter timeline, this is probably shared on there 50 times. And then it just took the right moment when the right collector was on a buying spree, and he happened to, I think it got mentioned, hey, this is Dan's Genesis, and he swooped in and bought it because it's Guy NorCal. And I think that something like that is a good example of, being patient. Patience is required in this market and with this activity. On the other hand, it can also be a really interesting creative process to think through, how do you present your work in a way that is true to you as an artist, but also appeals to somebody who might collect it. And I think for me, not having been, I was always a guy who sold prints in the previous, before NFTs, and that it removes sort of that collector piece. There, you're just making art, and you go, hey, I sell prints of my work, but you're not out there like intentionally trying to figure out how to get them in front of the right people that want to buy. It's a different mentality, at least for me. And I know that's not true for everybody. There's people who sell fine art and they're working the fine art shows, and they're, working with collectors, but that's never been me. Yeah, hopefully that kind of answers. It can be exhausting, and it can also be a really creative process, both.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And I mean, you mentioned a lot of gems there. It's I know some people they get frustrated quick. And I think that you hit it on the head. I mean, you came out with a piece of work. The market at the time, if I think back, so you said May of 2020.
Yeah, the first one I minted was 21, so May of 21.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha. I lost a year with, as we all did. But yeah, so May 2021. I'm thinking back. I mean, the space goes so fast, as you know. It was a weird time. It was a weird time because the attention span of people got quicker, let's say. Yeah. Thinking back to 2019, 2020, a bit different market, a lot different actually. But last year was quite crazy in terms of market. And so, yeah, I can understand. And then you said it took a little bit of time. And then you had to kind of think about, okay, well, what am I doing, or what can I do? And I feel like some people just, they lose the drive to try to push themselves. And it sounds like you picked up, you said, okay, this isn't working. I need to do something else. And then you just found the right person, or the right collector that came along. I don't like to call people, I mean, everyone's kind of a collector these days, but the right person, the right buyer, I guess.
To be clear, I mean, and this is something interesting to think about. I have this work all here. I have a whole other wallet that is the Dan Hawk Vault, and I have like 62 pieces of art collected. So, almost all of them are editions, or things that were gifts or free mints. I mean, I'm not a big collector. The most I've ever spent on a piece of art, I think, is 0.3. But I love being able to support people, and I love finding things that are amazing. So it's, I don't think of myself as a collector, and yet I know some people would hear that number and go, oh, well, he's a collector. He's bought a lot of art. So yeah, I mean, the name, what you call people, whether they're a collector, whether they're an artist, or whether they are a little bit of both, I don't think the labels are too important. It's just good to know that there's people out there looking for art, and people who are making art, and sometimes it crosses over.
Yeah, and that you hit it right on the head. And so the labels are something that we call people, but really and truly, I mean, you could do both, and you could do whatever you want, really. Yeah. And that's what's so great about it. But so you've been through, the market cycles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's a good example is that I put my first collection out when all the collections were booming and going nuts in August last year. Mm-hmm. And out of 20, I only ever sold 4 of them.
Okay.
So I don't, but it's interesting because that gave me the confidence to then create the next things. And I've, of all of the things I've made, we always talk so much about selling out selling out your collections. And to me, I'm just like anybody. I would love to see that happen, but there's only one thing I've made here that I've ever sold out, and it's one of my editions. Everything else has been, I've built these collections of things, and I've sold a few of them, and then somebody comes along and snags something every once in a while. And I feel like it's maybe a little unhealthy to always be thinking about selling out work, because I feel like that's kind of an artificial metric, if that makes sense.
It does, and I agree with you 1000% that it's unhealthy to have that sellout mentality. I think that people got used to that last year,
Yeah.
and the only reason I say that is because you had these big editions that were coming out, and I'm going to just say it, PFP projects.
Yeah.
And the measure of a project to be successful is if they sold out within a few minutes, right?
Right.
And that is not healthy. It's almost really unhealthy for a market. And so then we take those, we go, okay, well, why is this happening, right? And there's so many factors, but people don't always think of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, my work is still here, it hasn't sold out, so I must be a failure. And that's not true.
So here's an interesting way to kind of approach that. Photography, I think, I don't know the NFT market before February last year, but I know that at the beginning of last year, there was a sense that if you're going to sell an NFT, it kind of needed to be like a moving time lapse warp thing. Static photography was not really a thing. It was just not really big. And the collection you're looking at is 8 pieces. And if that's in the same market being bought by the same people as 10,000 piece avatar PFP projects, like, they're just not the same thing. They don't appeal to the same kind of person. They're not the same price point. And so for me to get, upset that my 8 pieces, that 5 of them are still available, these are not cartoon monkeys. I mean, I'm just being clear here. It's not the same thing. These are not tradable. The kind of person who would buy this is probably buying it because they really like photography. They like photography of the natural world. They like abstract photography of the natural world. And I think it's unhealthy to look at the markets going crazy over PFP projects and to have FOMO because people aren't buying my art.
Yeah.
To me, that's like getting all upset because people don't want to buy your car, or people don't want to buy your motorcycle because everybody's buying cars. Like, the kind of person who's buying a car is not the same person buying a motorcycle.
That's right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. No, your perspective is 100% right. And I think that people forgot that. Or they just weren't thinking, they see something and it's like if you go and drop like a blind mint on, photography, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't sell out in seconds. This mentality is, okay, well, it's, I'm not going to be able to flip it. So, the project's dead. Right. And that's sad. That's sad because there's so many great projects out there, and so many great art projects that are innovative, and people pass those up because they want to make a quick buck, and that's just sad.
And I think one of the things that happens is, and I've seen this with other artists, and even in my own thought process, is that I see, people are selling big projects and they're selling them out, so I better create a big project so that I can. I mean, it really comes down to so I can make money, because the reality is, if I'm trying to put together 100 images, I mean, that seems like that's too many images to even pick from, let alone, like, the only reason to me that would exist in those kinds of numbers is so that it's a collectible. I don't know that this is one of the things that comes back to what we talked about at the beginning. The individual image tells a story. I kind of don't want my one image to exist alongside 99 other images because it loses its power when there's too many. And so a good example is like this collection you're looking at. To me, I have other images that are kind of like these, but I feel like adding a whole bunch more, it kind of ruins the power of these ones. Like the story is a little overwhelming if there's too many. And so I one thing I've learned through this NFT space, and this is maybe off on a weird tangent, but I never curated my work or created collections the way that I do now since I started this process.
Wow.
And I really like that because it's made me much better at deciding what goes together and what complements each other and what is and what's extra baggage.
Wow. I love that. So one of the things I get really excited about is that, when people come to the NFT space and they start learning about the technology, they start to learn new things and new processes, and it's different, right? It's exciting.
Yeah.
Now, so you've been doing photography a long time, and sorry, I just got to ask this question because we're here.
Yeah.
Have you thought about, or have you ever done any mixed media, or are you thinking about adding music to your pieces, or creating like a different, maybe partnering with some people?
I have thought about it. I think it's one of those things where really early in the space, I was thinking, well, I need to put time lapses in here with music, or I needed to, do, what do they call them? I can't remember what the term is, but where you add the motion to a still photo. I can't remember what those, something graph. There was an app that did that.
Oh, the Cinegraph, is it?
Something like that. Yeah. I have thought about that a little bit, but as a photographer, and I do some video, it never felt like my goal is to make the photo tell the whole story. Mm-hmm. I actually prefer the still image over video as an artist for myself. I'm one of those people that has been complaining to no end about Instagram moving away from photos and towards video, because for me, photography is more powerful. And that being said, I do make videos. I'm working on a documentary project, kind of a personal documentary project. I do video for clients, but it's not as powerful to me. I could sit and stare at an individual image for, a long time. Videos, I get bored pretty quick. And I think it tickles a little different part of my brain. But yeah, that's kind of my thought on it. So I don't know that I will be adding multimedia type things to mine anytime soon. And it's mainly just because it doesn't speak to me.
Doesn't speak to you. That's a great answer. And you mentioned a documentary project. Would you ever think of minting that on the blockchain?
I can tell you what it is, and it might answer the question better.
Sure.
Yeah. So in this work here, if you don't mind going back to the one in the middle. It's the fourth one in. So this is a drone shot looking down on the mud tiles of the Alvord Desert. And the Alvord Desert is a place in Eastern Oregon it's kind of like Death Valley. It's a ancient lake bed where it rains and then it forms this gooey, sticky mud, and then when it dries out, it creates these crazy mud tiles. That is an area it's public land. It's managed by the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, and it's so remote that there's not any. They don't really do anything to manage it because there's no revenue out there, which means there's no developed campgrounds, there's no agricultural stuff, there's no mineral rights or anything like that. And I and a bunch of friends who go out there regularly have noticed that it's becoming more popular and being used more, which means it's starting to change the face of the desert playa. People are driving out there fast. They're creating campfires. They're doing all kinds of stuff on the playa, and it's actually changing the surface, and it's changing the natural composition of the thing. Because of that, I wanted to go out there and document what is that like. And then I'm filming interviews with people who live there, locals, but also people who go to visit. And so the purpose is not to get more people to go there. So I don't really want it to become popular. The purpose is to educate. And I'm partnering with some local conservation groups, one that's called the Oregon Natural Desert Association. And then also I've been working a little bit with Nature First and the Nature Conservancy. So I don't know that minting it to the blockchain would be appropriate, because it's not a commercial thing. I don't want to sell it. I actually want to find distributors to help get it in front of lots of eyes. So it kind of lives more in the, not even Web 2 world, but more in the just the normal in real life world, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I wonder if you would consider the historical value of the blockchain. Like you would just, instead of in the monetary value, but more of just minting it on there just for the historical presence.
That's actually a good call. And it's funny, like this is just goofy little anecdote, but like my avatar on all of the social media stuff, I actually minted that because, and it was just because I was like, oh yeah, that needs to be a thing. That needs to be minted. That needs to live on the blockchain. If I'm going to live over here and spend so much time here, I want it to be real. I want it to be something that's there. If you go to create it, you can see it, I think.
I did. Yeah, I did. When I was scrolling on your pictures, I did see, it's there.
It's there it is.
In your vault.
Yeah. And so for me, there might be some value in minting it, maybe not selling it to anybody, but maybe just minting it, or maybe minting it and gifting it to somebody who is involved with the project.
I love that.
Something like that.
Yeah, I love that. So now, okay, refocusing here a little bit, going back to you, let's see. What do you think it takes to succeed as an NFT photographer these days?
It's I think that's an interesting loaded question, because
it is.
Yeah. So for me, I think that you have to kind of figure out, what is the metric? What are you looking at as success? Are you looking to make a living? Are you looking to have an outlet for your art? Are you looking for a way to, develop as an artist? I think there's a lot of different ways you can, a lot of different metrics you can kind of zero in on. I think if I had to pick what is most important to me, it's been developing as an artist, and finding a way to present the art for a larger group of collectors, a larger audience. And it's not, I think it's goofy because we always talk about, I'm building my following, or I'm building my audience. I kind of always hated that. I don't have huge followings on social media. I think I'm 36 or 3,700 followers on Twitter, and then same on Instagram. And I don't have a huge Facebook following. Does anybody? But for me, it's been about developing a new way to share the art and a new way to sell the art to people who would appreciate it. And so for me, like the metrics of success is, am I able to share it regularly and have new people find it?
Okay.
In order to be successful, I think that the NFT world is unique, because it's not just about NFTs. It's about the crypto Web3 community. For me, it's about having conversations with people where we've moved away from the idea that it's about likes. We've moved away from the idea that it's about becoming an influencer. We've kind of moved away from a lot of the things that have kind of messed up artists in Web 2. The kind of the Instagramification of photography, where it's way more about, does a brand like you and want to partner with you? But there's also a challenge when you come over to the NFT world, where there's real money on the line. And it's easy to feel like a big failure if you don't have a sale for a week or 2 weeks or a month or even longer. And so in order to be successful, I think you need to build community. You need to connect with people, and you need to realize that sometimes the success is not selling the work. Sometimes the success is being connected with other artists to be able to support each other, to be able to talk through what you're going through, and to be able to share the work even if nobody's buying it. If that, I think there's a lot of good in making art that people can find and see, even if the person who's going to buy it doesn't find it right away.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. That is a fantastic answer. And honestly, people listening, you should definitely take note of that, because that's a true gem right there. It is that. And eventually, I mean, all your work will find a collector, or some, I use it again. It'll find a person, right? It'll find somebody who likes it. I mean, that's just how it goes.
Let me add something to that. It might find people who really like it, who don't have the money or
that's right.
buy art. I mean,
that's right.
This is one of the things that's kind of odd. So you remember last year, I think it was towards the end of the year, Kath Simmer did that whole big thing where she sold her one piece to one collector, and then when she did that, it freed it up for everybody else to use.
Yeah.
And the idea behind that was that it's already out there, and the art we make, it's cool if we can find a collector for it, but it's already free for everybody to look at. Like that, we're not trying to lock down who gets to see it. We're not trying to lock down access to it. We're just trying to say, hey, is there somebody else who wants to support this? And so as artists, it's a really, I think it could be really damaging to assume that if you can't find a person to pay for it and buy it, that it doesn't have value.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of art, people are going to see it, but they're never going to buy it from you. It doesn't make it less valuable. And in some ways, the broader audience that you can find, that might actually make it more valuable for you as an artist.
Yeah, I love that. Those are really good words of wisdom for those people out there that need to hear it, to be quite honest. Wow. If I could nod my head, I would, but unfortunately, it doesn't work over here. But you would have seen me nodding the whole time you were talking.
Yeah.
It's wow. This time flew. Honestly, Dan, I didn't get to a lot of questions, but one thing I want to drop real quick, and if you wouldn't mind, do you have to leave right at?
I'm good. I can go for a little bit longer.
Cool, because I have so many other questions. But if you're into the POAP scene, which a lot of people are, the POAP today, get your POAP out. The key phrase is, or secret phrase, I should say, is "We love Oregon."
Nice.
And if you're from the East Coast, you say Oregon. Sorry, yeah. I had to throw that out. That was very weird for me. I don't know.
We always make fun of the whenever people talk about Oregon on TV shows or things like that, they always say Oregon.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I've always said Oregon. But hey, and
well,
then when I moved,
yeah, to clear it up, what we say is we say Oregon.
Yes, thank you. I had to explain that to a lot of people, but I digress. That was a.
Well, it's like New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
Not New Orleans. It's New Orleans. Or yes. If you meet somebody who has a thick, heavy accent, it's New Orleans.
That's right. And if you ever go to Massachusetts, Worcester, Massachusetts,
if
you look at the spelling of that, you have no idea. I mean, no one does really.
That's the whole like Worcestershire sauce.
Yes. Right. Yeah, that's true. Okay. So we love Oregon. It's a hard one to up. My camera went crazy. Okay. Hard one to spell, but go for it, folks, and get that POAP. It's really awesome. My other question. So are you just native to ETH blockchain, or have you kind of bridged out a bit?
I have bridged out a bit. I'm just sorry. I'm seeing if I can mint that POAP. I don't want to.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't have a lot of them, but I'm like, this one has my picture on it, so we got to do that. I started on Ethereum, and then earlier this year, not even like last month. Last month, I put out my first collection on Solana, and actually they just went live like a couple weeks ago. So I have two different collections on the I'm forgetting which one is that Exchange Art, right? So Exchange Art, I have two collections on there, and then I actually just recently started experimenting a little bit with Tezos, and so I have a few pieces on Object as well, and it's been interesting because it feels like you're speaking a different language when you switch to a different blockchain, and so it was weird for me to figure out, okay, how do I had to go transfer some ETH back to Coinbase so that I could buy some Tezos. And then getting the object profile stuff set up was a little crazy, but I figured it out. And I put up some work that I actually had released earlier on Ethereum, and I actually pulled all the work down, not because I didn't like it, but just it wasn't received as well. And so I decided to release more of my urban street photography on Tezos, and then so that's what you're looking at here on the screen right now. And it's been fun. This is from a collection that I've only released 4 of them, but there are a whole bunch more. People of Portlandia, and the idea here is this is all from when I worked downtown in my banking career, and I would take all kinds of photos of people in the downtown area.
Man, I love Portland. Do you ever go to Voodoo Donuts? Just
So I'll just tell you, like I've spent my time there, but local Portlanders, I think, are not generally big fans of Voodoo Donuts.
That's what I heard. Yeah,
the donuts just aren't that good. I mean, they're not really they're like kind of dry. This is my take. We have a place locally that's called Blue Star.
Yes.
Yeah. Blue Star is insanely good, and we have another one that is called Pips Donuts.
Okay, all right.
Pips are actually, you know what? You have my work pulled up there. Go to the work one, and if you scroll down a little bit, you'll probably see some Pips in there because they're one of my clients. Oh, actually, yeah, I don't know if it's in here. It might be in the food one, but yeah, if you look under the food and you can scroll down a little bit, I'll be able to show you. There might be some pictures of Pips Donuts in there. Maybe they're just, that's Pips right there, the coffee. they make chai, and then go down one more. There's a couple eating there. See that one with the couple right there?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So they make little tiny mini donuts, and they make them to order. They're like the size of those Hostess donuts. They're little tiny ones, and they have this crazy cardamom sugar seasoning, and they have all these. My favorite one there has Nutella and a bacon relish stuck in the hole, and then it's drizzled in Nutella and sea salt. So Pips Original Donuts. If you come to Portland, you got to go to Pips.
Okay, good to know. All right. Yeah, I did hear the other one, Blue
Star.
Yeah, I did hear Blue Star. And of course we got caught in the trap for for Voodoo. But yeah, Blue Star. Yeah, that was really good. We did try that. So
yeah, but go to Pips when you come next time.
Pips
is amazing. And the owner, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, I think there's a picture of the owner.
I love this, man. I gotta say, I mean, these shots are making me really hungry.
Right there, that's Nate and his wife Jamie. They are the owners of Pips Donuts.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
man.
So they're a good client of mine. They're actually one of my first commercial clients I ever worked for. And when I announced that I was taking on this new job with Sony, he's one of the first people to congratulate me. So they're good. They're really good people.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So, but we kind of got steered off of course there.
Sorry.
Donuts. How do we get on donuts?
That's my fault. If the food's not brought into the conversation, it's
Voodoo Donuts. Yeah. So the work on Object is all what I've been putting on there so far has been street and urban photography, and these are a little different because they're additions. The work on Tezos tends to be a little bit lower priced. and there's a really, really vibrant community of artists supporting each other on here. So it's been really fun to put some stuff up there, have a few of my pieces collected by collectors that I've admired for a long time, but also artists that I've really admired for a long time.
Before I ask about the other chain, I told people the wrong code. It is We Love Oregon. So I did correct that in several places. But if you're getting it, Dan,
I'm typing it in right now.
Okay, all one word. We Love Oregon, and it should work just fine. So I know we have a few people that really, really, really like POAPs, and this is probably one of our better ones. So I'm excited.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, you talked about Solana too. Now, I'm curious because I haven't ventured into Solana. I've been on multiple chains throughout the years, but Solana isn't something I've jumped into yet. What's your experience, but or your thoughts between Solana and Tezos?
Yeah. Okay. So I think a really good way to think about them is to think about what the tokens cost, and that will give you some sense of of how people think about pricing and how people think about what's there. I think that there is Solana it feels smaller to me. I don't know if it actually is, but it feels smaller to me than and a little bit less active than the Tezos market. And I only know exchange art. I haven't really dabbled outside of there, but what I've seen so far is that the collectors that and the artists that I've been introduced to on Solana are super, super rabid fans of art. Like they're nuts. You show them work and they're like, this is so amazing. This is great. And they're supporting all kinds of great graphic artists. Photography seems like it's kind of new on Solana. And the pricing is, I think it seems like, ETH is what, $1,700 right now. Solana is, I think, like 47, something like that, right? The last time I looked, it was like in the $47 range.
Okay.
And Tezos is like $1.60, $1.70. And so that affects how people price things. And so for me, what I've jumped into Solana is I'm trying to be kind of cutting edge for photography. Photography seems like it's kind of new there. And so my goal is I'm pricing these so they're roughly the price of like 0.25 ETH. It's this collection you're looking at right now, it's called A Sky Full of Stars. Those are all kind of priced in that like $300 range if you convert it to USD. And so for me, I'm selling one of ones there. I'm aiming for these to be equivalent, close to what I would sell one of one work for on Ethereum.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I do, some of these, if I were going to put them on Foundation, I might charge more for them. I'd like to kind of get some traction here and kind of be part of the community, because the people that have supported me so far and have given me feedback and have shared my work are amazing people, and they're really kind. So I love the idea of kind of building slowly here. Whereas I think of Tezos as a little bit, there doesn't seem to be the same market for one of ones. It seems like it's far more oriented towards editions, maybe that have a lot of pieces.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's also a great way for people to, go, hey, cool, I'm supporting you. Like I have a few artists that I bought pieces from there that I never would have had the budget to buy from otherwise. A good example, Leslie Spurlock, she has a photo that's called Black Hat that is one of the most gorgeous. It's kind of sensual. It's sort of boudoir. It is absolutely gorgeous. And I would have never been able to afford it where she had it on Foundation. And as soon as she put it on Tezos, I'm like, I bought 2 copies of it.
I love that. Yeah. And I recently jumped on I've owned Tezos for a number of years now. But I didn't. I actually gave it to my wife to play with.
Oh yeah,
because she's an artist, and so she started minting on Tezos back when in the Hind days, And I said, yeah, go ahead. Here's all my Tez and have a good time. I was staking it for a while, and then I recently jumped back on, and man, yeah, you're absolutely right. It is it's so cool to collect all your friends, right?
Yeah.
And because the work's good, and like you said earlier, I mean, this kind of puts it back into perspective. I mean, you may be a really good admirer of someone's work, but you're just priced out of it on ETH, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
you know,
that photo, I really wanted to buy the one of one, but I just didn't have. I was like, I can't afford that. And then she
yeah,
announced, I'm pulling this and I'm putting it in Tezos. I'm like, done. Like, just tell me when you meant it.
yeah, man. And yeah, I was able to collect a few of of Leslie's as well. So I mean, it's fantastic. It's a great community, and it's really building, and I love the energy, and yeah, so love that.
Yeah.
And to hear about Soul, man, you really piqued my interest. I tell you.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because one of my most supportive collectors who's bought work on Ethereum, when he saw this work, he's like, "Oh man, you just made me think I might need to get into this other chain." And like, that's kind of my hope. I feel like there's, we talk so much about this idea of decentralization, right? And having things be, the benefits of crypto is that you're not tied into these exchanges, you're not tied into these marketplaces. But it's almost like we chained ourselves back down to the same stuff we were trying to get away from. And
yeah,
so it's interesting to me to think like, okay, I'm going to put art on a different blockchain, and that blockchain behaves differently. There's different people there. There's different understanding of what people do there. So I really like that. And I'm kind of looking forward to a day, like I would love to be able to showcase the work I put here, to have that be in the same gallery, to have everything be interchain and be able to talk to each other. Like, I think there's a future where these other chains are just as popular and just as nice of a place for you to display your work and have it collected.
I love it, and I do think that that interoperability between chains. I know it's being developed. It's buggy as all you know what, but I think it is the future, right? It's almost like, remember when cell phones first came out and you couldn't really talk to like AT&T or whatever, couldn't talk to Verizon, for example. And now they all talk to each other, type of thing, and networking and everything. I think looking ahead in the future, that all blockchains will talk to each other through like this connecting blockchain. So,
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to those days, kind of, sort of.
Get there. I mean, it's one of the things that's super interesting for me. I'm not really a tech person. Like I'm pretty. I know enough to be dangerous. I know I'm okay with some graphic design. I can do a little bit. Like, I built my own websites. I don't claim to be a crypto programmer guy. That's not me. What I do value is the idea that the underlying concepts of how we're doing this, but why, and also why we're doing it, can make a big difference in the way we create and share art going forward. And I think that's like a good example would be if, like, let's say this picture that's on your screen there. If somebody said, "Hey, I want to buy this and I want to use it for an advertising campaign." Right now, the way that would have to work is we would negotiate over email, and then I would write up a contract with a license for how they can use it. And then I would say, "Okay, here's the contract. Once you sign this, then I'll email you a link to a Dropbox where you can download the image, and after you pay me, you can start using it." And probably they would pay me by, maybe it's a wire transfer, perhaps they mail me a check, or maybe they go, "Hey, well, we have some ACH thing we can do." The problem then is they use it, but if somebody else wants to use it and finds it on the internet, there's nothing to stop them from using it and slapping it up on their website or their social media and putting their logo over it. And if I want to get remunerated for that, I have to follow up with them. Like, I have to go out of my way to get in touch with them, threaten them with a cease and desist, or send them a bill, or things like that. That's dumb, because where we're at now is, what if I could just, when the photo leaves my Lightroom or Photoshop, What if it just gets minted with metadata? It just gets added, a blockchain NFT token gets assigned to it. And anywhere it goes in the world, whether it gets used on the web, whether it goes into a printer somewhere, it just phones home and tells me where it's been used. Wow. And the person, maybe the printer on the other end goes, you can't use this, you can't print this photo unless you pay for it. And here's the Ethereum address, and here's how you pay. I don't have to even call me. It's just baked into the contract. Oh, you want to print it? Well, that costs you 0.25 to print, or 0.05, or whatever the price is. What if we could just build that right into our image creation process, so that we don't have to worry about licensing down the road? We don't have to worry about chasing down people. We don't have to worry about copyright, because the image can't be used without phoning home. I think that's the future.
Wow. I love that. Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack, I know, and I'm not tech savvy enough to create it, or I would be trying. But I'm like, Adobe, someone needs to send this to Adobe and go, hey, you guys need to get on this.
No, so in another life, I was in the business world for a while, and what you said really hits me, because these are the practical uses that the blockchain needs, and I see it with you. I went on a tangent this morning when we were talking in a different Twitter space, but the rental market for homes is similar to that. I won't go into detail, because like I said, I'll go into a big tangent. You'll never shut me up. But there's so many practical uses, and your experience with how you do the commercial, it really comes into focus, because it really does, because it's that practicality that we haven't thought of. But this technology is so cool, and the contracts, they're actually, once you start dabbling into them, they're not that complicated. They're actually a lot more common sense than we think.
Yeah.
But it is a skill, and it's a very useful skill right now, especially. Yeah. But this practical use, it's basically, if you could dream it, we can do it. And I think that you're right, and I think that we're heading towards this digital world. We're already there. But we're not there for certain things.
Right.
And if we can get there for like supply chain, if we can get there for photography, art, all these things, this becomes a lot of the problems that we've been facing for so long, with people stealing work and doing this and doing that, and the right click save movement and all that, garbage, really can go away a little bit, right. And we can start making solutions. And I think your vision of the future is something that will happen. I really do.
Well, and I think there's other pieces too. I came from the banking world, where I know quite a bit about merchant processing, Visa, how that stuff works, and wire transfers and ACH and all this stuff. And then it's interesting, because people get all fired up when they hear that, like yesterday here in the United States, the Federal Reserve bumped the Fed target rate. And I understand what that means, because I was a banker. But I think we're so, it's gotten trite to say this. We're so new, we're so early. The thing that is going to be interesting is that mass adoption happens when you begin to take away some of the risk, which is hard, because the thing that has made people rich with crypto is the risk. It's the risk reward. The problem is the average person doesn't have the means to put $1,000 into something and watch it tank. So that you can't gamble away money that you can't lose, right?
Right.
And so my guess is there will be some kinds of hybrids that use crypto technology, but are a little more tied into guaranteed funds. And it won't be as lucrative, but it will be safer. And that's kind of my gut feeling. My prediction is that there will be some chains that maybe don't have quite the upside. You can't get rich off of buying something and then having it skyrocket, but you can use some of the same technology and have it be a little safer. And so I think once we see that happen, that's when the mass adoption will start happening for using crypto.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is it's a little sad. I've heard a lot of people go, I don't want mass adoption, because if that happens, it means that the art's not worth as much. It means that we can't go sell art for $20,000. But if you want your aunt to pay you back for the drinks you guys, just bought using Ethereum, like that's not going to happen, because right now that money could be worth twice as much tomorrow as it was today, or half. So
yeah, and I think you hit on something. I'll just say this, and I'll ask one last question for you. But I think you hit on something when it comes to Ethereum. And especially during that time last year when you first started, it is for me. So I started when Ethereum was like $100.
I wish.
You're right. I know. And, and some people started when it was cents, and so when I came in, it was real cheap, and, it had just fallen really quickly the day after I bought it, which is sad. But it's like when ETH goes up that quickly and that much, it's so hard to spend it. It's so psychologically taxing. And then for me, it's like, okay, I see this beautiful piece of art. And that's why I'm buying like crazy on Object, honestly. I see this piece of art I want, and I'm like, well, but ETH could go up, to this price tomorrow. And then it means that I just spent, double that price, but it could go down too. And, it means that I could have cashed it in at that price, and there's such a psychological warfare that happens all the time. And eventually after like 4 years or 3 years or whatever I've been in this, I lost track, but I just don't care anymore.
Well, you have to kind of turn off that fiat conversion thing. Otherwise, it's like you don't think about, this is a good way to, something to kind of wrestle with. Before crypto, we still had the dollars and euros, right? And you don't make your decisions here as an American based on how well the dollar is doing compared to the euro. Like that's not a decision we make, and it might fluctuate, but you don't do that because this is where you live. The problem is right now, that's not where we all live. I can't pay my bills with Ethereum.
Yeah.
So one Ethereum is cool and great, but if Ethereum cranks up really high, I might need to cash that out to, like, for instance, as a freelance photographer, I had a couple slow months, and I took some of the sales I made earlier this year and I cashed some of it out to pay to pay myself as a working photographer. And luckily I was able to hang on to enough that I'm kind of riding out the hopeful rise of Ethereum, but you just have to do that. And we're not to a point where you can just use it to pay people yet.
Yeah, we're not. And that's 100% true. And maybe we'll be in 5 years, maybe we'll be there. Right.
Yeah. But
I'd
love to see that. I like the idea that right now, if you think about it, it's so easy when you go buy something on the internet, you can usually just put PayPal in, right?
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be cool if at some point lots of us have crypto and you can just very easily just say, oh yeah, I'm going to pay with crypto. And you already can, I think, with, which one was it? It's not PayPal. It's Venmo. I think Venmo has pay with crypto.
Yeah. It's already, so I could tell you, we could spend probably a couple hours talking about how many things that I've seen from when I started to now, and it's changed so much. So I can only imagine within, 2-3 years, it's going to change even more. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
My wife was laughing at me when I first started, like, this is never going to take off. And now she's like, well, when can we get more of it?
Well, and it's funny too, because I think there's, like, I've had some sales in there, getting back to a question you asked earlier, like how draining or how life-giving it can be. And I think right now as an artist, the amount of time you need to spend here is a little insane.
Yeah. And
I am finding I'm starting a new job. I've been off the internet. Well, I'm still on the internet a lot, but I'm not on Twitter much this week. And that might be kind of my new normal, because it's just, you have to be on so much to keep your art front and center. I think one of the things that's difficult. And for a while there, she's like, this is not paying. Like this, you're spending way too much time on this. And then I had some really nice sales that were great. And then I started doing some consulting work in the NFT space for somebody. but I'll be honest with you, I got paid in dollars, not in ETH for that.
Yeah.
And it's because, you know, my time is worth a certain amount as a creative person, as somebody who makes stuff, and I know what that's worth. It fluctuates too much for me to get paid in Ethereum, because I can't buy groceries with Ethereum.
Not yet, but one day, hopefully. And I'll leave you with this one last question, because we did talk about it before the show started. Cameras. Do you see them ever minting NFTs from a camera?
Okay, so I mean that's a really interesting question. I think we don't know each other well enough. You know, are you a photographer? Do you what's your?
Yeah, so I am. I wouldn't call myself anything really, but I take a lot of pictures, and I make like abstract art out of my pictures. Cool. And
I've seen all that, but it's always, you kind of just don't know how people think of what they do. And you know, like this. I mean, here I'm sitting here at the table. Like this is almost an appendage, right? I mean, it's.
Oh, I love that.
I have that, and I have a whole bunch of gear behind me. Maybe it's unique to kind of think about how people think about when they take photos. So when I take a photo, I'm shooting in a raw format. The photo is not ready to share yet. So in order for it to be ready to share, I have to do some post-processing on it. It has to go into the computer. Now, there are some photographers who shoot JPEGs in the camera, and then they share them directly. Like a good example is a lot of the work that you've seen, like Leslie Spur, like we brought her up as a photojournalist. That work there's not much post-processing happening there at all. And most of that work is those are just basically the JPEGs that she shot in camera. So wow. There's some camera work that you could mint it directly from the camera. A good example is if you go to like the Olympics and you watch the photographers at the Olympics, they are shooting with cameras that have in fact, I don't remember if this one has it or not. Yeah, I don't think this one has it. There's some cameras that have they have a LAN port on the side. And it's because they can literally plug a Ethernet cable from the side of the camera directly into a computer, and they can upload the images as they take them to the news agency. That is a certain way of doing things. And so some people do take pictures, and they're shooting JPEGs, and the news agency gets the JPEGs and they publish them almost immediately. Wow. That's not normal for like the photo behind me on the wall, other side, mirrored. That's a photo that I took, and I probably spent 2 or 3 hours editing that photo. It was good, but there's a lot of work that got into making that look right. And so to mint it would assume that the file is done, so that it can get uploaded to Arweave or IPFS or whatever place the blockchain is using. So I don't think the camera is the right place for it. I think the right place for it is in the editing software before you export the final version. That makes a lot more sense to me.
I like that answer, and funny you should mention that. I use Photoshop quite intimately every day, and that whole suite. So that I like I said, I wouldn't call myself, I wouldn't label myself as something, because I don't really think of myself that way. But I do like to make art, very much so. And I did see, which I think is really funny, in the new update for Photoshop, there is an NFT in the settings. When I went to save it, I go, oh, wait a second, this is NFT. And I laughed and I said, see, wife, look how far we've come after 3 years. It's nuts.
It's inevitable. Something like that's going to happen. Right. And that's why it's an interesting question, because figuring out where is the right spot for that. How does that work? And to me, it's as a creator. Well, and we're digging into the weeds here a little bit, but the question really has to do with provenance and creation, right? Yeah. And so my final images, while I might get legal copyright the moment I click the shutter, to me, the final image that I'm copywriting, that I consider the canonical version that I own as the copyright holder is the final one that I output after editing. And so I think that's the place where we go, okay, I want to be able, like when I export files, I can decide all kinds of stuff. I have one that's labeled NFT export, and I know it's a certain size, it has a certain kind of metadata embedded in the file, but I don't have the ability to mint to Ethereum. Wow. And that will be super interesting. Maybe after we get to the proof of stake shift, and we start seeing gas be cheaper, it might be like a more realistic thing to have Adobe have a plugin for that.
Yeah, I think it's on its way. To be quite honest, I could see it, and usually if I could see it, then it happens within a couple of years or a month or two.
Man. Oh, that's another thing we didn't bring up when we were talking about the blockchains. It's so pleasant dealing with Solana and Tezos because the gas is not really a concern.
Yes. Okay. I want you to use your imagination and think about Ethereum back 3 years ago.
Okay.
I had to think about that for a second. Before 2021, what a bad year. And when it was affordable to mint, and that changed a lot of things for a lot of people. And in fact, I was minting art like crazy, and I was having a great time. I mean, that's the most fun I've ever had in my life. Which is kind of sad to say, but also it was. So, it's like the gas really screwed everything up. I mean, it's like everything last year sucked, in my opinion. So,
well, I mean, okay, even yesterday. So current news, right? Marco put out his big giant edition thing yesterday, 8,888, right?
Yeah.
And it was a free mint, and you could mint 2 of them. I minted 2, and I think it cost me $50 to mint because of the gas. And that was when Gwei was like at 30. So or no, 25. So that's just ridiculous, and that's feels kind of dumb. It almost feels like I'm in Oregon, I almost said it wrong. We don't have sales tax in Oregon. Paying gas feels like paying an absorbent sales tax to me. So I say get rid of it. Like I'm looking forward to the day when we don't have to deal with it anymore, because you'd go as an artist, you go, oh, I'm going to mint something. Cool. It doesn't cost me anything to do that. It's super cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, so when they added the contract to, so I didn't mint anything for a year. I was so pissed off, because you get to the point where you don't know if it's going to sell. Yeah. And if you're shooting that Ethereum over, you're just wasting money. And then, it's, and that, like I said, there's that psychological, thing that you keep having to think about.
Oh, yeah.
And then I just start Tezos, and you see me mint, like I minted like 3 or 4 things same day. I was like, I just can't. I have all this art sitting here, and I want to get it out there. And then I said, wait a minute, I'm minting way too fast. You're gonna scare some people off. So.
And I did the same, and I kept looking at my wallet and going, like, am I burning too much of what I put in there minting?
Yeah.
I kind of forgot. Yeah. Well, a good example. I mean, this is here's my story of wasting a lot of money. Last year, Cactux made his tux.art site, and a bunch of us jumped on board, and it cost me $600 to mint and list something.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it never sold. In fact, it did sell. I burned it off of Tux, and I reminted it for a collector on Foundation.
Oh.
And the collector was cool enough to go, hey, let me pay you a little extra for what it costs you to burn it and do all that stuff. So I'm loving where we're at right now, because things are kind of reasonable. It's not awful, but I'm loving the idea of getting rid of the gas fees. And also, I'm a landscape photographer. I love the world. I love the earth. I love the idea of let's burn a lot less electricity, burn a lot less fossil fuels to create electricity to make art. Like we're dealing with computers here. There's no reason for 100 people to all be doing the same thing at the same time to try to make this secure. We have ways around this now. So let's move on to proof of stake.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm very excited about proof of stake. I have been for a while. Big supporter of Polygon, to be honest. And and other chains that have already been there. So yeah, let's do it. I mean, it's going to be great. And I love ETH. I always have, it always made me feel like this, the cyberpunk person when in reality, I'm definitely not. It gave me that aesthetic and I love it. But yeah, I can't wait. This has been great, Dan, honestly. I had such a good time talking with you, and man, you're making me miss Oregon a little bit.
Yeah, come visit.
I do have to come back. It's been a while. We had a nice little road trip there. Like I said, like 6 years ago and stuff. I look through those pictures all the time, which is funny. Before we leave, what's next for Dan?
Well, like I mentioned, I just it'll be an interesting season. So I just started this new job where I'm the field rep for Sony cameras here in the Pacific Northwest. So that's going to be taking up a lot of my time. But what's kind of fun is I'm planning some events with fellow NFT crypto people that live in the area to do some actual in-person events at the camera stores. So it's not NFT centric really, but it's more like, hey, you are a great shooter. People know who you are. Let's have you come to the store. Let's do workshops. Let's talk about how you make your art. Let's go out shooting together. I'll bring a bunch of cameras along. People get to try new gear. So I'm going to be focusing on a lot of that through the end of the year. I have a bunch of work out there that I'm going to continue sharing and putting out and promoting. I have some ideas. There's one thing that I'm really thinking about, and it's going to be probably a larger edition project that is centered on the natural world, almost as like to kind of think about the idea of that nature is its own generative art. So I can't share a whole lot more than that because I'm still working on it, but I'm always kind of thinking about what's the next thing, what's the new piece of art or the new project, the new thing I can focus on. So that will likely be coming up here later in the year. And I'm also working, I totally forgot about this. I had my first collection that I ever sold out was, or not collection, but edition was my Badlands Awakening. And it was an aerial shot. And I spent a bunch of time in Utah earlier this year. And I have a whole collection of photos that I've been working on. It's a series. I don't know what it's going to be, how many. I don't know if it'll be an edition or if it'll be one-on-ones. I don't really know yet. But I'm super excited about sharing those. So those will all be coming fairly soon, hopefully in the next couple months. But I'm going to keep making art. I mean, that's everybody always talks about like, here's my utility. My utility is I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep making art. And as the blockchain NFT world evolves, I'll be kind of, making some shifts to accommodate that, take advantage of it, meet new people. Yeah. So that's in a nutshell.
Man, I love that. Yeah, I have a question for you after the show, but that's fantastic. Dan, it has been a pleasure for me.
Oh, thank you so much for the invite. It's been really fun.
Man, it's such a great talk. Really great perspective you have here. And I know I've said it. I like to compliment a lot because I mean it. Your work is fantastic. And I really enjoy your perspective on life. And your shots are great. So cool. Awesome. Yeah. And with that, thanks everybody for tuning in. I know we had a bunch of people on the Discord and also, throughout many different areas that were watching, and I'm very happy about all of that. And yeah. And hopefully everybody got the POAP. I'm pretty sure I was checking a few things while I was asking questions, so I'm pretty sure everyone grabbed it. So if you didn't, I guess it's a scarce asset. So
yeah, there we go,
man. But thanks everybody, and we will see you next time.
Cool. Thanks.